My name is Elaine Mercer, and at 68, I thought I understood everything about human nature, love, loyalty, and even loss. But I was wrong. Nothing prepares you for the moment you realize the person who shares your blood wants you dead. I was born into wealth. My grandfather had built Mercer Petroleum from nothing, clawing oil and fortune out of the stubborn Texas soil. When he died, the empire passed to me 500 acres of land scattered with pumping rigs and storage tanks, a business worth more than $80 million. People think money brings peace. It doesn't. It attracts ambition, envy, and sometimes monsters wearing familiar faces. The Mercer estate was beautiful but hollow, 14 rooms of polished mahogany, chandeliers that caught the morning light, and rugs from Istanbul soft as clouds. But since my husband Charles passed away 5 years earlier, the house felt more like a museum of memories than a home. That October morning began like any other. I was in my study, reviewing production reports from one of our fields when I heard the low growl of a car engine rolling up the circular drive. I didn't need to look to know it was my son. Ryan Mercer, 35 years old, successful in appearance only. He had his father's good looks and his grandfather's charm, but none of their discipline. His life was a trail of failed ventures and financial rescues, each one costing me more than just money. When he walked in without knocking, I saw the tension written across his face, the tight jaw, the restless hands. "Mom," he said, voice tight. "We need to talk." I set my reading glasses on the desk and studied him. "You look exhausted, sweetheart." He gave a short laugh that had no humor in it. "Thanks. I'll get right to it, I need money." There it was. Always the same conversation, always with more urgency. "How much?" I asked, already bracing myself. 100,000. The words hit me like a slap. "That's not a small request, Ryan. What's it for this time?" "It's a new tech startup," he said quickly, like he'd rehearsed the line. "Online marketing using AI, it's revolutionary. My partner's got serious connections in Silicon Valley. We're projecting major profits." His speech was smooth, but his eyes gave him away. They flickered when he mentioned the partner. "What's his name?" I asked. "You don't know him," Ryan said too quickly. "From California. He's got experience." I had cross-examined enough liars in my lifetime to recognize one. "You're not being honest with me," I said softly. He leaned forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "Why do you always have to control everything? Every decision I make, every chance I take, you're there, holding the leash." I sighed. "I've supported you through every business venture you've had, and none of them have succeeded. Maybe it's time to stand on your own." His tone darkened. "You call this support? You've given me just enough to fail. Just enough to look like an incompetent fool while you sit here surrounded by your fortune." The words stung, maybe because there was a grain of truth buried inside them. I had been careful, perhaps too careful, with how much help I gave him. "Ryan," I said quietly, "I can't keep funding your mistakes." He stared at me for a long moment, and then something shifted behind his eyes, something cold. "Give me the money, Mom," he said slowly. "You won't be needing it much longer anyway." My heart stopped. "What did you just say?" He looked away, jaw tightening. "Forget it. I'll figure something out." He walked out without another word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the glass. I stood there in silence, feeling the ground tilt beneath me. For the first time, I wasn't just worried about my son's future, I was afraid of him. That fear turned out to be justified. Because 2 days later, he came back and he didn't come alone. 2 days passed, but the echo of Ryan's words wouldn't leave my mind. I replayed that moment over and over, his anger, the desperation in his eyes, and the chill in his voice when he said I wouldn't need my money for much longer. By Thursday morning, I had almost convinced myself I'd overreacted. Maybe he'd just been emotional, careless with his words. But when I saw his car in the driveway again, and the passenger door opened, I realized this wasn't an apology visit. Tessa, his wife, stepped out beside him. Even from my kitchen window, she looked flawless, every hair perfectly in place despite the early hour. Her movements were smooth and practiced, like someone performing for an audience that never stopped watching. Tessa and Ryan had been married 3 years, though it always felt like an arrangement rather than a marriage. She was beautiful in a cold, deliberate way, Platinum hair, eyes like polished glass, and a smile that seemed to calculate its worth before appearing. They arrived at exactly 10 o'clock, not early enough to seem eager, not late enough to be rude. The precision made my stomach twist. I opened the door before they could knock. Ryan. Tessa. This is a surprise. Tessa smiled, holding two delicate porcelain cups on a small tray. We brought you coffee, Elaine. I thought we could all use a little pick-me-up. Her tone was sweet, but something about it felt off. People don't just bring you coffee and bone china unless they're trying to set a scene. She followed me into the kitchen, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. It's a new blend, she said, setting the cups down. Ethiopian roast with Madagascar vanilla. I thought you'd enjoy something different. The aroma reached me before the cup did, rich, but strange. Beneath the sweet vanilla note was a faint bitterness, sharp and chemical, like the smell of almonds mingled with antiseptic. My instincts, honed by decades of reading people and evidence, screamed that something was wrong. But I smiled politely and took the cup. How thoughtful, I said. You always have such exquisite taste. Ryan lingered near the doorway, silent and uneasy. His phone was in his hand, but he wasn't using it, just clutching it, like a man waiting for something to happen. So, Tessa said lightly, taking the seat across from me. Ryan told me there was a little misunderstanding between you two. About money. I kept my tone neutral. A discussion, yes. Business and family don't always mix. Tessa nodded, eyes fixed on me. Of course. Family support is complicated. But I think when loved ones need help, we should find ways to say yes. Her words were carefully chosen, rehearsed. Every syllable was measured, the kind of performance I'd seen from witnesses trying to steer a story. She hadn't touched her cup yet. I lifted mine, pretending to take a sip. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her watching too closely. The kind of attention that wasn't about conversation, but confirmation. And in that tiny window of distraction, I acted. I set my cup down, reached for the tray, and switched my cup for hers. The porcelain clinked softly. Neither of them noticed. So I said, forcing a smile, tell me more about this new business venture. Tessa's gaze flickered, just a moment of surprise. She took a sip from the cup that had been meant for me. I waited. At first, nothing happened. But 20 minutes later, as we chatted about trivial things, she coughed. Once. Then again. Harder this time. Are you all right? Ryan asked, his voice tight. Tessa's face had gone pale. My throat, she gasped. It's burning, I can't. She doubled over, coughing violently. Something's wrong, Ryan said, rushing to her side. Call an ambulance. I stood, heart pounding but face calm. Because in that moment, one thing became painfully clear. That coffee had been meant for me. And my daughter-in-law had just poisoned herself with her own trap. By the time we reached the hospital, Tessa was barely breathing, and I realized her performance wasn't over yet. The drive to the hospital felt endless. Ryan gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white, while Tessa gasped and writhed in the back seat, one hand clutched around her throat. Hold on, Tess, he kept saying, voice breaking just enough to sound convincing. Just hold on. But even as I watched him fuss over her, part of me couldn't shake the feeling that I was witnessing a performance. Every tear, every tremor, felt rehearsed. The smell of almonds still clung to my hands, faint but unmistakable. I didn't need a lab test to know what she'd used: cyanide. Fast, efficient, nearly undetectable unless you knew where to look. Whoever prepared that coffee had done their research. If she'd given me a full dose, I wouldn't have survived the drive. By the time we reached the emergency entrance at Mercy General, her breathing had grown shallow. Nurses rushed to meet us, guiding the gurney through automatic doors that closed behind them with a final hiss. Ryan and I were left standing in the hallway, the bright fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows on his face. He ran a shaky hand through his hair. I don't understand what happened, he said, voice trembling. She just collapsed. I said nothing, because I did understand. 30 years of legal experience had taught me the art of silence. It unsettled people more than words ever could. Minutes later, a doctor appeared, a woman with steady eyes and clipped speech. Are you family? She asked. Yes, Ryan said quickly. I'm her husband. This is my mother. The doctor nodded. We've stabilized her for now. She's showing symptoms consistent with acute cyanide poisoning. We've sent samples to the lab for confirmation. The word hung in the sterile air like smoke. Ryan turned toward me, shock etched across his face. Poisoning? That's insane. How? I was hoping you. The words twisted like knives in my chest. He was planting seeds, shaping a narrative where I wasn't the victim, but the villain. When the detective returned, I could already see the change in his expression. The polite curiosity was gone, replaced by professional caution. Mrs. Mercer, he said, flipping open his notepad. Do you often argue with your daughter-in-law? No more than most families, I replied evenly. We've disagreed, but nothing serious. And you're certain she prepared the coffee? I watched her do it. He made another note, then asked the question I'd been expecting. If you suspected something was wrong, why didn't you refuse to drink it? I wasn't sure, I said. It was instinct, nothing more. I switched the cups to be certain. He nodded slowly, as if filing my answer under too convenient. By the time the questioning ended, my nerves were frayed. I went to check on Tessa before leaving, but when I pulled back the curtain around her hospital bed, she was already sitting upright, pale but alert. Her eyes met mine, cold and triumphant. Doctor, she croaked, pointing a trembling finger at me. That's her. She did it. She poisoned me. The accusation hit harder than any physical blow. Ryan froze, torn between performance and panic. The detective turned sharply, studying me with renewed interest. I could see the next chapter of my nightmare taking shape, not in the courts I once commanded, but from the lies of my own family. The next morning, detectives searched my home, and what they found there would change everything. By sunrise, the police were at my gates. The house that had always been my sanctuary, quiet, orderly, safe, suddenly became a crime scene. Flashing lights bathed the Mercer estate in red and blue, and strangers in gloves carried cameras and evidence bags through my front doors as if they owned the place. Detective Hale met me in the foyer. Mrs. Mercer, he said, tone polite but firm. We have a warrant. That wasn't entirely true. I was hiding something, fear. Not of guilt, but of what someone else might have done in my absence. I watched as investigators spread through my home. They dusted for fingerprints, photographed every surface, cataloged every item that could possibly be linked to that poisoned coffee. My kitchen, the place where I had shared Sunday breakfasts with Ryan as a boy, now looked like a laboratory. One of the technicians called out, "Detective Hale, you'll want to see this." He followed the voice toward the guest bathroom upstairs, and I trailed behind, heart pounding. On the counter, sealed in a clear evidence bag, sat a small glass vial half filled with a clear liquid. Next to it, a folded piece of paper, a handwritten list with neat rows of notes and dosage figures. The first name on that list was Tessa Mercer. I stared at it, the room spinning slightly. Mrs. Mercer, Hale said quietly, can you explain this? I took a step closer. The handwriting, God help me, looked like mine. The same sharp loops, the same slanted crosses on the T's. I've never seen that before, I said, but my voice came out thinner than I intended. Are you sure? Because this appears to match your handwriting sample from the report you signed yesterday. He held the page up beside a form I'd filled out at the hospital, and I felt the ground tilt beneath me. The resemblance was uncanny. Whoever planted this had studied me. Detective, I said slowly, someone must have put that there. It's not mine. I don't even use that bathroom. Is anyone else living in the house? No one but me and my housekeeper, who comes twice a week. Was anyone here yesterday while you were at the hospital? The answer struck like a blow. Ryan, I whispered. He said he was going to our place to get Tessa's things, but he had access here too. He still has a key. The detective's expression hardened. Are you suggesting your son planted evidence to frame you? I hesitated. The words felt impossible to say aloud, monstrous even. But the logic was unshakable. I'm saying someone with access and motive did this. And right now, he's the only one who fits both. Detective Hale studied me for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then he said quietly, we'll send these items to the lab for testing. Until we know more, I need you to remain available for questioning. When the team left hours later, the house felt ruined, every drawer rifled through, every piece of my life touched and catalogued. The faint smell of fingerprint powder lingered like dust over old memories. I walked into my study and looked out at the oil fields shimmering under the Texas sun. The derricks pumped rhythmically, steady and unstoppable, as if mocking the chaos that had overtaken my life. I had spent my entire career building cases against criminals. Now, someone had built one against me perfectly. But whoever they were, they'd made one mistake. They'd forgotten who I used to be. By nightfall, I was no longer a suspect, I was the prime suspect, and if I didn't fight back soon, my son's lies would bury me alive. By the time the police left, evening had settled over the estate. The house was silent, but not peaceful. It felt violated, every drawer emptied, every memory turned inside out. I sat alone in my study, the soft ticking of the antique clock filling the space where laughter used to live. 3 days ago, I was a widow managing an oil empire. Now, I was the suspected poisoner of my own daughter-in-law. I poured myself a small glass of wine, though it tasted like ash. My reflection in the window looked like someone else entirely older, wearier, dangerous. They'd found the pea. I need help, I said quietly. Someone's trying to destroy me. And I think it's my son. That silenced him again, but not for long. Tell me everything. For the next hour, I laid it all out. Ryan's demand for money, the poisoned coffee, the planted evidence, and Tessa's carefully timed accusation. When I finished, Daniel exhaled slowly. This is bad, he said. Really bad. If the handwriting analysis matches and your fingerprints are on that vial, they'll move to arrest you soon. I know, I said. That's why I need you to help me find someone who can fight this. I have just the person, he replied. Adrian Lowe, defense attorney, ruthless, brilliant, and allergic to losing. He owes me a favor. Make the call. 2 hours later, Adrian Lowe walked into my home like a man inspecting a chessboard. Mid-50s, sharp-eyed, and perfectly pressed, he carried a briefcase that probably weighed more than most people's conscience. Mrs. Mercer, he said, taking a seat across from me. Daniel filled me in. You're in serious trouble. I assumed as much. He gave a thin smile. The good news is, the case against you has holes. Big ones. Such as? For starters, he said, opening his notepad, if you'd planned to poison Tessa, you'd have needed to know she was coming over that morning. But her visit wasn't scheduled. That kills premeditation. I nodded. Unless they argue the coffee was meant for Ryan. Adrian's eyes gleamed. Exactly the kind of thinking that makes my job interesting. But there's more motive. Killing your son's wife gains you nothing. If anything, it endangers your public image and family trust. He leaned forward. Tell me about the evidence they found. I described the vial, the list, and how the handwriting resembled mine. Adrian listened without interruption, only scribbling occasional notes. Finally, he said, that's your strongest defense. It's too perfect. Real criminals don't leave confession notes beside poison bottles. The next night, I saw Ryan's car in my driveway again, but this time, he wasn't here to talk. That night, sleep refused to come. Every creak of the house, every rustle of wind through the pecan trees sounded like a warning. I'd lived in this estate for over 40 years, and yet, for the first time, it felt like enemy territory. Around 3 in the morning, I heard it. The low hum of an engine approaching the house. I moved to the window and parted the curtain just enough to see the silver headlights winding up the gravel drive. Ryan's BMW. He parked near the front steps, but didn't get out immediately. Instead, he sat there for several minutes, the glow of his phone screen lighting his face. He was making calls. When he finally stepped out, the moonlight caught him. He wasn't dressed for a visit. Dark clothes, gloves, no overnight bag, no flowers, no pretense. This wasn't a son coming to check on his mother. This was reconnaissance. He walked up to the door, tried the handle, then circled the side of the house. My heart thudded in my chest as I watched him test windows, glance toward the security cameras, and check the lock on the back entrance. He was looking for a way in. I stayed still, my breath shallow, every instinct screaming to grab the phone and call 911, but I didn't. I needed proof. The security system recorded every movement, every attempt, every moment of his midnight trespass. After about 20 minutes, he gave up. He walked back to his car, ran a hand through his hair, and drove off into the darkness. I stood there long after his taillights disappeared, gripping the windowsill until my knuckles ached. It was no longer a theory. My son wasn't just desperate, he was dangerous. At dawn, I called Adrian Lowe. He answered on the second ring. Elaine? He was here, I said. My voice trembled, but not from fear. From fury. At 3 a.m. He tried the doors and windows. He was looking for something. Adrian was silent for a moment. Adrian, I said softly, I think he's planning something worse. I don't doubt it, he replied. Stay inside. Keep the house locked. If he contacts you, don't respond. After hanging up, I made coffee carefully, deliberately, and sat in the kitchen staring at the same countertop where Tessa had nearly died. Every cup, every surface, felt like a reminder of betrayal. By noon, Detective Hale called. His voice was clipped official. Mrs. Mercer, we've received the lab report from the items found in your home. My stomach tightened. And? The handwriting on the list is consistent with yours, he said. And your fingerprints were found on the vial. The substance matches the poison from Mrs. Mercer's bloodstream. For a moment, I couldn't speak. That's impossible, I whispered. Those items weren't mine. I'm sorry, he said, and his tone softened slightly. But I have to ask you to come down to the station for additional questioning. You have the right to have your attorney present. When the call ended, I felt the last remnants of safety dissolve. The evidence was aligning too perfectly, too easily. Every piece was falling into place, all pointing at me. Adrian arrived within the hour, his expression grim. They're closing in, he said. They'll make an arrest soon. But we're not done yet. We just need time and proof of Ryan's involvement. I looked past him to the window, where the oil fields shimmered in the midday heat. My family's empire, the one my grandfather built, the one I'd protected, now stood as the motive for my own destruction. If Ryan wanted a war, he'd chosen the wrong opponent. That afternoon, the police came to the house again, and this time, they didn't come to search. They came with handcuffs. When the knock came, it wasn't a surprise. 3 sharp raps against the front door, firm, final, and professional. I already knew what they meant. Through the glass, I saw 2 uniformed officers and Detective Hale, his ex. During my years as a prosecutor, I never thought I'd be on the other side of it. They placed me in a small, gray room with a single metal table. Adrian sat across from me, his expression controlled but taut. They're confident, he said. Too confident. It's almost like they want this case open and shut. But we'll dismantle it piece by piece. Ryan? I asked. My voice cracked on the name. Adrian hesitated. He's been cooperating fully. According to his statement, you've been unstable, paranoid, that you've made accusations against Tessa for months. My breath caught. He said that. He did. He also claimed you kept cyanide in the house for pest control. The lab found trace chemical residue in your utility room. It's being treated as corroborating evidence. I felt the blood drain from my face. I've never used poison in my life. Adrian leaned forward. Listen to me. They have a narrative, and they're building it fast. Wealthy woman, declining mental health, resentment toward her son's young wife. It's neat, emotional, easy for a jury to digest. We're going to rip it apart. The door opened then, and Detective Hale stepped inside. He looked tired, conflicted even, but his duty was clear. Mrs. Mercer, he said, you're free to speak, but anything you say can and will be used in court. I looked at him steadily. Then here's what I'll say. Someone in my family tried to kill me, and you're helping them finish the job. He held my gaze for a long moment, then turned to Adrian. We'll set a bail hearing for Monday. When he left, the silence pressed down like a weight. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. They'll fight bail, but we'll win it. In the meantime, I've asked Daniel to dig deeper into Ryan's finances. Good, I said. Because I know my son. If he's desperate enough to frame me, he's desperate for a reason. That night, they put me in a holding cell, concrete walls, iron bars, a narrow cot. Across from me, a woman with faded tattoos. What? It was all so painfully simple. The betrayal, the false evidence, the late-night intrusion, every move had been part of a larger plan. They underestimated me, I murmured. Daniel gave a grim smile. They always do. He handed me one more document, a printout of an email. The subject line read, Transfer Authorization, Estate Transition Plan. It was a draft of a legal request to transfer ownership of Mercer Petroleum's assets into a private trust. The signature line bore my name. Forged, but convincing. Found this on Ryan's laptop, Daniel said. He never sent it, but it's ready. The moment you're convicted, they'll activate it. I stared at the page until the lines blurred into static. He's going to destroy everything his grandfather built, just to save himself. Not if we stop him first. The words were cold, steady, and certain. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than fear. I felt purpose. The next day, I made a decision. If my son and his wife wanted war, I'd give them one. And I wouldn't fight fair. The following morning, the air over the Mercer estate felt different, sharper, charged with something electric. For weeks, I had been reacting, cornered by lies and false evidence. That ended now. If Ryan and Veronica thought they could destroy me with deceit, they were about to learn that I'd built an empire on strategy, not sentiment. I called Adrian first. I want to set a meeting, I told him. Not with the police, with my son. Adrian's voice tightened. Elaine, that's dangerous. He's volatile. Good, I said. Let him be. People make mistakes when they think they've already won. By noon, I was ready. I asked Daniel to install a new set of hidden cameras, smaller, subtler, invisible even to the trained eye. Every angle of the study and kitchen was covered. I wanted their faces, their words, their plan captured in crystal clarity. That evening, I called Ryan. He answered on the second ring, his tone. Mom, he began, I'm glad you called. I've been worried. Sit down, I interrupted gently. We'll talk better face to face. He hesitated, then took the chair across from me. The same one where he'd sat weeks earlier, demanding money. I've been thinking about everything, I said. About how things got so twisted. Maybe I should have helped more. Maybe I drove you to desperation. His eyes flickered confusion, then curiosity. He didn't expect this. You're not angry? I was, I admitted. But what good does anger do? Family should fix things, not destroy them. He relaxed slightly, leaning back. I couldn't agree more. I poured us each a glass of water. You and Tessa deserve a fresh start. You said your business needed funding. Maybe we can revisit that. The moment I mentioned money, his attention sharpened. You'd really consider that? Under one condition, I said. Full transparency. I want to see everything, your business partner's credentials, your accounts, your projections. He hesitated for half a second too long. Of course, he said finally. That's fair. But his smile didn't reach his eyes. He stayed for almost an hour, weaving half-truths into practiced charm. I listened, nodding at all the right moments, while the hidden cameras silently captured every word. When he left, I watched his car disappear down the drive, then turned to Daniel, who'd been monitoring the feeds from the security room. Did we get it? I asked. Daniel grinned faintly. Every second. Including the part where he mentioned transferring the business assets once everything's settled. That's as good as an admission. Adrian, who'd arrived midway through the recording, exhaled slowly. It's not a confession yet, but it's leverage. We can use this to push him into a mistake. Then that's what we'll do, I said. He's coming back tomorrow with Tessa. I'll give them one more chance to finish their game. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the study, sir. Right on time, Ryan's car rolled up the drive. A moment later, he stepped inside, followed closely by Tessa, or rather, Veronica, though she still wore her mask of perfection. Elaine, she said with that polished smile, it's good to see you looking better. I returned the smile. I'm full of surprises. Ryan looked uneasy. Mom, we shouldn't drag this out. You wanted to talk, let's talk. Yes, I said. We should. I gestured toward the sitting area. Please, both of you. Sit. They obeyed, though Veronica's eyes never stopped moving, scanning the room, assessing, calculating. She was good. Too good. But I had learned from the best manipulators in courtrooms and boardrooms alike. I've been thinking about our family, I began slowly. About the future. The company, the estate, the trust. It's time to discuss succession. Ryan's expression shifted, surprise, then hunger. Succession? Yes, I said softly. You'll inherit everything someday. But I don't want there to be confusion about how or when. I pulled out a folder from my desk drawer, the one Daniel had prepared, and slid it across the table. These documents outline a transitional trust. I'd like you to review and sign your portions today. Veronica leaned forward. You're transferring control already? For now, I said, keeping my voice measured. Partial control. A test of your responsibility. Her eyes glittered. That's incredibly generous of you, Elaine. Ryan, clearly trying to match her composure, said, It means a lot, Mom. Really? They opened the folder. The first page was a summary, real enough to look legal, but containing subtle traps. Hidden clauses that Adrian had written specifically for this purpose. As they skimmed, I asked casually, You've both been honest with me about your finances, haven't you? Veronica didn't look up. Of course. Ryan nodded too quickly. Absolutely. Good, I said, leaning back. Because if I find out otherwise, if I discover deck. Once everything's settled, we'll move the funds quietly, it said. Ryan froze. You recorded me? I protected myself, I said. Something you should have done before trusting a woman who's been lying to you since the day you met her. Veronica lunged toward me, but Ryan caught her arm. What's she talking about? Her silence was answer enough. I turned to them both. I've already sent the recordings to my attorney and the police. By tomorrow, the real story will come out. Ryan's face drained of color. Mom, please. But I stood. My voice was steady cold. No, Ryan. You made your choice. For a moment, the room was deathly quiet, just the sound of the clock ticking between us. Then Veronica ripped the folder in half and stormed toward the door. Ryan followed, pale and trembling. When the door slammed behind them, the silence that followed was absolute. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. But it wouldn't last. That night, a call came from Detective Hale. Veronica Chase had vanished, and Ryan Mercer was missing too. It was just past midnight when my phone rang. The sound sliced through the quiet house like a siren. Mrs. Mercer? Detective Hale's voice came through, calm but edged with tension. We have a situation. My chest tightened. What happened? Your son and his wife, they're gone. Veronica Chase's car was found abandoned off Highway 47. Both of their phones are disconnected. I gripped the edge of my desk. Gone where? That's what we're trying to find out, Hale said. We checked their apartment. It's been cleared out, empty closets, no computers, no financial records. We believe they may be attempting to leave the state. Of course they were. The moment they realized the evidence had turned, flight was their only option. Detective, I said quietly, they won't get far. Ryan doesn't know how to disappear, and Veronica doesn't know when to quit. When I hung up, I called Daniel Cross. He answered on. Exactly, Daniel said. That's where she started everything. She'll want to vanish where she's most familiar. The next morning, Adrian joined us in my study. The air smelled of stale coffee and sleepless determination. I spoke with Hale, Adrian said. They're issuing warrants, but if Veronica has forged identification, she could cross state lines without detection. We'll need another angle. Publicity, I said. Let's give her nowhere to hide. Adrian frowned. You're thinking of going public? Yes. A statement. A press interview if I must. Let the world know who she really is, her aliases, her crimes, her connection to my son. We control the narrative before they do. Daniel gave a slow nod. That's risky, but it might force them out of hiding. And it did. 2 days later, after my statement aired, a calm, controlled address about ongoing legal matters and misrepresentation by close family, a call came through on my private line. No number. Just silence at first. Then a voice I hadn't heard since the day she tried to kill me. Impressive speech, Elaine, Veronica said smoothly. You almost sound like you care. I didn't respond. I wanted her to talk. "You've ruined everything," she hissed. "Do you know what you've done? You turned Ryan against me." I almost laughed. "No, Veronica. I didn't turn him against you, I just showed him who you are." "You think this is over?" she spat. "You think you've won?" "I know I have," I said. "And when you're caught, you'll finally face consequences for every life you've destroyed." She was silent for a beat, then said, "You always underestimate what people will do when they're cornered." Then the line went dead. I stood there, listening to the empty dial tone, feeling the familiar chill of realization the war wasn't over. It was only changing shape. Ryan was still out there, tangled in her lies. But the tone in her voice told me something I couldn't ignore. She'd lost control. And when people leave, Ryan's been calling a few people. Mostly friends from Texas, but no business calls. I think he's trying to lay low before disappearing again. I took a breath, steadying myself. "Do you have eyes on their car?" "Yeah, it's a rental. We've got plates and everything. But they're laying low. No visible sign they're leaving." "Good. We need to move fast, Daniel. They're running out of time." I hung up, turning to Adrian, who had been quietly monitoring the developments. "Pack your things. We're heading to Los Angeles." Adrian didn't hesitate. "I'll make the calls." "You think they'll run again if we push too hard?" "They will," I said, "but this time, they won't get far." We made it to the city in under 5 hours, adrenaline, determination, and old habits pushing us forward. By the time we reached the motel, the sun had set, and the streetlights cast long shadows across the cracked pavement. Daniel met us in the parking lot, his eyes sharp with focus. The manager confirmed they're still in room 107. "I've got a team inside tracking their movements. We'll move in at 10 p.m. I nodded. "And we're ready?" "Ready as we'll ever be," Daniel said. "We've got law enforcement support if necessary. No backup for them." "Good," I said, voice steady but hard. "Let's make this count." At 9:30, we parked 2 blocks away and waited. Time dragged. I felt it deep in my chest, the weight of everything I'd lost, everything I was fighting for. The Mercer name, my legacy, my reputation. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about survival. At precisely 10 p.m., we made our move. Daniel led us to the back entrance of the motel, where 2 officers stood waiting. We walked in like we owned the place, Adrian and I flanking the entrance while Daniel and the officers moved toward the stairs. The motel room door was ajar. I could hear the faint sound of muffled voices inside. Ryan's. Veronica's. I held my breath. This was it. The door creaked as we pushed it open. Veronica's lips curled into a smile, a bitter, hollow thing. "You really think you're going to get away with this? You think you've won?" "I know I have," I said, my voice even. "You used my family to get to my money. You poisoned me. You manipulated my son. And now, you'll answer for everything." Ryan's face twisted in anger, but he didn't resist. He couldn't. The officers moved in, cuffing him and Veronica with professional efficiency. As they were escorted out of the room, I stepped forward. I felt the weight of every decision I'd made to get here, every step of this nightmare. But it was over. Daniel caught my eye, his expression unreadable. "It's done." I nodded, watching as the officers led Ryan and Veronica away. As we stood there, I couldn't help but wonder, if things had been different, could we have saved Ryan from all of this? But there were no answers now. In the end, the truth had won. 3 months later, as Ryan and Veronica's trial began, I stood in the courtroom watching them face the consequences of their actions and realized that, sometimes, the hardest battles are the ones you fight within your own family. The courtroom was packed. Faces I didn't recognize, faces I wished I didn't have to see, reporters, law enforcement, former friends of the family, all staring at the Mercer name, now marred with scandal and betrayal. Ryan sat at the defendant's table, his once cocky demeanor reduced to a hollow shell of fear and guilt. Veronica, or should I say, Victoria Hale, was beside him, her eyes cold, calculating as always. They had no idea what to expect from the trial, but they knew their lives were about to change forever. The prosecutor spoke first, laying out the evidence, the forged documents, the illegal transfers, the testimony of witnesses who had once been swept into their web. The poison in the coffee, the carefully orchestrated scheme to take everything from me. I sat silently, watching them twist in the wind. But I paused, letting the weight of my words hang in the air. The moment I realized what Ryan had done, not just to me, but to our family, I had to make a choice. I could have let him walk away, let him pretend it never happened, and let him destroy everything my father built. But I couldn't. I couldn't let my family be tainted like that. Not on my watch. The room was silent. Even the judge seemed taken aback. Ryan's defense attorney stood and attempted to discredit me, but the truth was undeniable. The evidence was overwhelming. After a grueling few days, the verdict was in. Guilty. Ryan and Veronica were both sentenced to significant time in prison. The weight of their crimes was too great to ignore, too deep to escape. But it wasn't just about punishment. It was about the undeniable cost of betrayal, not just the years lost in a cell, but the years they had stolen from me. As I walked out of the courthouse, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. It was over. The nightmare had ended. Ryan's lies, Veronica's manipulation, it was all in the past now. But the road ahead would still be long. The Mercer legacy was mine to rebuild. And I would. Not because I had to, but because I could. Because in the end, the greatest strength isn't found in money or power, it's found in knowing who you are, no matter what anyone else tries to take from you. That evening, as I sat alone in the study, the weight of it all finally hit me. I wasn't just a mother. I wasn't just an heiress. I was Elaine Mercer, a woman who had survived everything life threw at her, no matter how dark. And no one, not even my own blood, could ever take that away. The trial was over, but the story of the Mercers was far from finished. There were new battles ahead, new challenges, new opportunities. But I was ready for whatever came next.